This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 383 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 20th of April 2026. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelan.
Howdy.
Graham.
Good evening.
And Will.
Hello.
We got an email from Brad. What are your opinions on trustworthiness of new distributions? I've seen some interesting new distros like Origami and Vitruvian show up recently, but while testing, I started wondering, should I trust these with my data?
No. End of segment. I'm with you on this one.
I think it's complicated. I don't think you can just say no. I mean, would I trust my data with it? Probably not.
So you've just said no, basically, and just not wanted to admit to us.
If a bit of open source software comes along and gets popular, and, you know, presumably the reason Brad tried these were because they were maybe in a YouTube video or a Reddit thread or something like that, there is going to be a number of people who will try and find what's wrong with them. And, you know, if there's anything nefarious in there, I think it's going to be found relatively quickly with the likes of Wireshark and stuff like that, right? So I think your malware worries, I wouldn't be that worried about a new distro. I mean, it's something to think about, but it's not something to worry about. The quality of the code and the potential accidental vulnerabilities and stuff, that's where you should worry, I think.
Or just the longevity of where you can proceed afterwards when that developer just can't hack it anymore. Not to pile on Martin that he decided that he was very responsible in handing off Ubuntu Mate, but it wouldn't be the first time that a developer just went, oh no, I've had it, I can't do it anymore, and literally one day to the next it's gone.
Yeah, or, you know, we've seen people have problems with illness and, you know, family circumstances change or whatever. If it is a very small team, especially if it's a team of one, then you've got to be careful there. Although it's not that hard to migrate to a new distro, generally speaking.
I think the landscape has changed so dramatically since Ubuntu first came on the scene, where previously you had 3 or 4 well-known distros that had been around for a bit longer. And then Ubuntu comes along, new, but with a company behind it, with a business plan behind it, not a kind of hobby, doing it with my mates for a laugh thing. And all of the social media presence for these companies, it's very easy to have a very professional social, I say it's easy, I don't know how to do it, but plenty of people do, to have a very professional looking social media presence and give the impression that you are a much bigger organization than you actually are. And so I don't think you can just like watch a video and decide that something is going to be good and going to be reliable. There are a lot more bad actors out there who are more interested in stealing your data than there were 20 years ago or whenever it is that Ubuntu came on the scene. But the biggest problem, in my opinion, is the sort of supply chain attack vectors that we see attacking PyPI and NPM all the time now. If you are a professional organization with a well-managed, administered, audited build pipeline, you're okay. But if you're a guy who is interested in putting a Linux distro together for the intellectual challenge of it, do you have the skills and the knowledge that a team of SRE engineers are going to have of the same level? Are you going to be able to put together a system which is absolutely immune from all of these opportunities for people to inject malware into your code? I don't think so. I'm happy to be proven wrong on this by anybody, but I personally would not trust a couple of guys who are out having a bit of a laugh and learning something to be trusted with my day-to-day driver. I would run it on a test laptop to poke around and see what it's all about, but I wouldn't use it day-to-day.
Yeah. If it's a small team of 1 or 2 people, what happens if they go on holiday or get ill or something, and then there's a big security issue and they need to package new software to put into the distro and give you updates, but they're just not around to do it. A company like Canonical has got a team specifically to do that are distributed around the world, and even on holidays and stuff like that. I mean, remember the Spectre and Meltdown stuff? That ruined a lot of people's festive period.
Yes.
Well, and yours as well, yeah. But they were there to do it, weren't they? The big distros were around to patch that issue. And you've got a proper security team. Canonical's even got like a kernel team, I think, right? So there is something to be said for a professional organization, or something like a Debian where it's really well established and they've got a governance structure and whatnot, an Arch even.
I don't know who brought this up, but I've heard it a few times. Could your distro just be a script to customize, Debian or Ubuntu, whatever? And you may have a great idea, you may have a total new outlook on stuff, but if it could just be one of those supported distros and a few tweaks, then that's what you should do. Stick to as much of the base as you can. And I know a lot of people love, it needs to be rolling, blah, blah, blah. It was like, well, does it really, though?
Well, I remember Regolith Linux. I haven't checked it out for ages, but that at the time, it did have a standalone ISO, or there was just a PPA that you could add to Ubuntu, and then you would get Regolith Desktop. And I've always liked that approach of do the least that you have to make your thing be the thing that you want.
Even Martin with his naughty Linux thing, he had the requirement that he would stick to Ubuntu as the core because it was part of their compliance for their auditing and stuff.
Yeah. Could this distro have been a shell script, essentially?
Exactly.
Is the question he asked. And the answer was yes. Yes, it could.
Notice Graham hasn't said anything out there on the bleeding edge of Arch, as he is, maybe.
Well, the thing with Arch is that you can, and I do, look at what it is that I'm installing. And I do. And it's funny because Will kind of said this. Back in the day, we all installed all of the distributions all of the time. I remember in the old podcast, we'd do one we'd try one for a week. And I must admit, I never really thought about the privacy aspect of it. So it's a sign of the times that it is now, I wouldn't take that risk. I would certainly try out new distros, but I'd do it on a machine that I wouldn't put any real data into. And for a machine that I had to daily drive, I would only choose something with, a trusted repository of archive. I wouldn't take the risk anymore. So for experimentation, for playing, for trying to support a project, if it wants to take it further and say it's a good idea, carry on, I would experiment, but I wouldn't put my real data in. And for everything else, just the main distros. And Arch with AUR actually, I think, works quite well because it's very visible and easy to understand.
You see, I don't really trust the AUR. Maybe I should, but I've actually been checking out Arch on easy mode, Endeavour OS. I put that on a ThinkPad and I've been trying to daily drive it. And it's been interesting. I think I'll talk more about it once I've got more experience with it. But one thing that I've specifically been avoiding is the AUR because I just don't quite trust it. And I don't think that's based on anything necessarily rational, but I think if I stick to the repo, I'm probably going to be all right. I don't know. You're an experienced Arch user. Talk me down, Graham. Tell me I should definitely use the AUR. It's great.
Oh, no. I think you've got to be careful. I do. And there's a reason why you have to install and then upgrade them outside of basically the Arch ecosystem. In many ways, you're on your own. You take liability for those updates and you do have to be careful. And I update the AUR stuff I've installed on its own separately when I need to, and I install them when I need to. And with looking at the repository, basically, which oftentimes is building from the source repo of whatever it is that I'm building, augmented by the package build of what Arch does. So I am careful with AUR, and I think that's the best way of doing it. And most Arch users shouldn't use AUR if they want to trust their OS.
I'm not convinced of the need for loads of distros anymore because with things like Flatpak and DistroBox, it doesn't really matter what distro you run. I mean, that's something I'm finding with this Arch experiment, that if something's not in the Arch repo, then I can just install Ubuntu effectively on top of it via DistroBox and then get the thing that I need. And I think I could probably get by these days on Fedora, Ubuntu, SUSE, whatever it is, because ultimately the software packaging ecosystem is really mature now. And so I can just get whatever I want from wherever I want it. And, if I want the latest version of software from Arch, I can install an Arch distro box on Ubuntu like 24.04, which is 2 years old at this point. So it's just not that appealing to me, unless you want a specifically new desktop environment or something, which, let's face it, I definitely do not. I want XFCE, so it's just not appealing to me. But maybe if you want like new shiny shit all the time, it makes sense from a desktop point of view. But the applications, I just want my desktop to get out of the way and let me run the applications that I want to run. And so I just don't see the need to distro hop anymore.
It's interesting how I remember trying wobbly windows and desktop switching cubes and all of those kinds of things. And it felt like it was the future. And it turns out the future is actually less of that.
Yeah.
In the future, everything should be the same.
It should be the same and bland.
Yes.
Great idea. Amazon won't release Fire Sticks that support sideloading anymore. So we kind of knew about this anyway. This new Vega OS, which is Linux-based, was on the Fire Stick Select. I think it's called 4K Select, something like that. Well, Amazon have actually come out and said it now that that's it. The existing Fire Sticks and FireCube and everything will continue to run Android, but anything new that they release will be this Vega OS, which is much more locked down, doesn't support sideloading of hooky football and movies, apps and everything. So it's kind of a sad future, really, if you're into hooky streaming apps, which, as it happens, I'm not, but I know a lot of people who are.
I think that one of a number of things are going to happen here. One is that the Fire TV stick was easy to get hold of and relatively cheap, will be replaced by a generic Android stick imported from China and sold by blokes at pubs on the side. So I don't think anything's going to happen there. People were not buying Fire TV sticks because they really loved the Amazon ecosystem. In fact, I think people have largely fallen out of love with the Amazon ecosystem, especially since the Alexa devices have got considerably worse over the last few years. And the same goes with Fire TV sticks. They have introduced bugs. They haven't added any new features, and the things that they thought were going to generate money, people buying stuff through these devices, hasn't played out because the experience was so terribly bad. So I think really the writing is on the wall for Amazon devices generally, both smart speakers, TV sticks, and everything else they do. I think people will just go to the generic Android ones and they'll have a great time. I hope that also we see some generic Linux ones so that we can still have something that we have a bit of control over and that we can tinker with, which is what the Fire TV sticks held interest for me, was the tinkerability. If they're taking that away, fuck them.
I think there's a lot of people out there who wanted a fairly cheap but good quality stick to watch Netflix and Disney and all the rest of it on. And I don't think that market's going to go away. I think that loads of people will just buy these new select ones, whatever they call them, with the Vega OS. I think it was a relatively small number of people who wanted to watch the football and whatnot on it, and they will go to a generic Android device. In fact, I saw some Reddit threads and there were people talking about various devices that I hadn't heard of that were good for this. So yeah, I think that market is already there. It just seems a shame that, like, I mean, I know you obviously can't trust Amazon, but the thing is, like, I trust Amazon to be a shower of bastards and collect my data and stuff, but I also trust them to ship updates to it regularly and patch security holes, whereas some random Chinese Android stick, like, I just wouldn't want that on my network.
I think you're a bit naive because I think Amazon wouldn't do either of those things anyway. So,
well, Fire Sticks are the Android devices, in my experience, that get more updates than any other. It's almost daily they get little patches. And is that Amazon just adding more and more spyware? Who knows?
Updating their host file.
Who knows what they're doing? But they do get frequently updated, and that gives me a little bit more confidence. That said, I don't leave them plugged in. I plug it in, watch something, unplug it, which is probably bad for the stick, but what do you want to do with 40 quid?
I think if you're watching pirate football, you don't really care about software updates.
That is true, yes.
When I say pirate football, I don't mean like peg legs and parrots on shoulders.
I would certainly watch it if people were taking a hook to the face.
It's not just rugby.
That is a racist statement against fat blokes.
It's okay, I'm a fat bloke. I'm allowed.
Oh, fair enough then.
Well, we recently talked about the Software Freedom Conservancy. There's a blog post from them written by Denver Gingrich, Eternal November. This influx of users may be better than the last one. Now, I am not old enough to remember this Eternal September business. I'd heard of it, but I didn't realise that it was a Usenet thing. But was it in the 90s or something? A bunch of new people turned up on the internet, 1993, I think, and ruined Usenet or the internet generally. Anyway, Denver here proposes that we're now in the Eternal November because a bunch of new software developers using AI bullshit are being treated terribly, and we should welcome them in. And just because it's different, that's fine.
I was on Usenet in 1993. That's terrible, isn't it? I'm still on Usenet. I don't remember this, but there certainly was an old guard.
Was that because you were the new people, Graham?
Yeah, maybe you're right. And they disappeared or went off to the well or whatever they did and left Usenet to the rest of us. And I guess that's what's going to happen here. We need to create our federated bulletin board system. Come on.
I mean, the argument is that there's a bunch of young developers that want to contribute to open source. They're using LLMs and agents to do it, and that we need to help them rather than shun them. And rather than tell them to piss off, AI word I can't say, we need to welcome them in. But I'm not having this. I'm not having it.
I was talking to a young person the other day about how they came to be involved in open source, and it was through their university degree, and they were working on some, I think, Kubernetes related project, and their lecturer or whoever it was, their professor, said what you should do is go onto their bug tracker, find a bug which is flagged as good first issue or paper cut or something like that, which defines that the maintainers believe this is an easy bug to fix. You should go find those bugs and start fixing them and put up pull requests or whatever the equivalent is. And that's how you can introduce yourself to a project, become known, get to know the people working on that project, and eventually learn more and more and contribute more and become a real either maintainer or real significant contributor to that project. And they were saying, what do we do now? How do young people or anybody with a lack of experience come to an open source project when all of those easy to fix issues have been fixed by a robot in 5 seconds and nobody gets to learn anything? And I think that's a very interesting question, and I have not got a good answer to that. I think that the genie is out of the bottle. All of those crufty old bugs that have been sat around that no one could really be bothered to fix, suddenly you've got a free workforce who are only too happy to fix those bugs, but nobody really learns anything about it, and no knowledge is transferred from one person to another person. So I think that this problem about welcoming people in, I think actually you need to be more welcoming to people into your project. Otherwise, you won't have anybody to fix your bugs other than AI, and then you'll be entirely dependent on it.
So yet another bad thing about it. Well done.
I don't want to be stereotypically me and be totally against this, but it is a bit hard to look at AI tools helping launder code. And then, on the other hand, we're supposed to be happy when these people turn up with laundered codes to add to the projects. It's a difficult one. I don't know how you get people to want to do the work of their own. I mean, an AI obviously helps you do loads of work. It may go away in the future. What do you do when you don't have the skills underneath it? I don't think it's a great way to learn to code because it's kind of helping you with stuff that you should know already, and then you should be the one telling it, no, that's not right. So, I don't know, I find it really difficult to have people start off with AI code and not have learnt the hard way first.
Yeah, it's like learning to drive an automatic, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good analogy for it, all right? As bad as car analogies are.
Yeah, I learned in a manual, but I've never driven one since. Why would I? It makes no sense. But at least I can if I have to.
Good luck in the future of electric cars then, Joe.
What do you mean?
I mean, they're all automatic effectively. So
well, exactly, yeah.
So why would any young person, if we're assuming the future is all electric cars, need to learn about manuals?
Do you think all computers will be programmed with LLMs in the future?
I was avoiding going into this too deeply. I think Maybe.
Do you, though? Do you really think that they'll last that long?
I just cannot see it because LLMs and agents are not deterministic.
You can make them deterministic.
Bullshit. Bullshit you can. By their very design, they're not deterministic. You cannot get the same shit out of it with the same prompt twice. Not exactly the same. It doesn't matter how good you make them. The very nature of how they work means you cannot do that.
So you could create a framework. So you're assuming that, look, I don't want to get into it because I know your stance on this, but there's shades of grey. And in terms of LLMs augmenting code contributions, I don't think there's any going back.
Mm.
And I think you denying it is just you burying your head in the sand.
Do you think those companies will exist, though?
No, I think there will be a crash. I think everything's overhyped and it's destroying the environment, but I don't think there's any going back, essentially.
I agree with Graham.
Well, I agree that there's no going back, but I don't think that they will be the be-all and end-all. Like this argument that they are like the new compiler or the new abstraction, I just don't buy that because it's not an abstraction.
But what about in 10 years?
In 10 years, the fundamental technology is not going to have changed. The technology has fundamental limits in that it is not deterministic. And I don't care if you can argue with me if you want and tell me that they are deterministic, but they're fucking not. Just how they work is not deterministic.
What I said is you can build a framework to make what you need deterministic. You can build tests. There's a lot of things you can do to shoehorn the part that may help you from LLM into what you actually need, not pasting verbatim what comes out of it.
If you define a problem with sufficient scoping such that the problem you want it to solve is very, very well defined with an absolute clear outcome, you will get code that meets that outcome every single time.
It's not the same code though, is it?
Not necessarily, but why does that matter? As long as the inputs are acceptable and the output is correct, it doesn't matter what's in the middle. The process of writing code is a very fun hobby, but it is now way easier that the actual code that comes out is kind of a commodity now, and the definition of the problem is where the thinking happens.
So you're telling me that it doesn't matter that it's not deterministic because you give it the problem, it gives you the solution, and the solution works every time, even if it's different every time, slightly. And you don't think that that's a problem, that the code is slightly different given the same inputs, because ultimately the outcome that you want to achieve, like, you know, you want a button to change from red to green or whatever, it doesn't matter whether that code is exactly the same as long as the button goes from red to green. Is that the argument that you're making to me?
Sort of, yes. I think that the functions within the process can be different. In so much as if you compile C code from C to assembly, you should 99.9 times out of 100 get the exact same output. But sometimes that won't be the same. Sometimes it will be optimized in different ways. But the actual functionality of the code doesn't really matter as long as you and you can apply such well-defined constraints to the input and to the output that the bit in the middle, the black box, is irrelevant.
Right, but you cannot have reproducibility here. With C, you can, with a lot of effort, and timestamps are one of the problems, and you know there are a lot of issues with this, but you can get to a situation where if everyone has the same compiler version, if everyone has the same environment, blah, 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 you can get some code that compiles into an identical binary on my machine versus your machine halfway around the world, right? You can do that with a lot of effort. With prompts and agents and output, you cannot get that to be reproducible by the very nature of how it works. But your argument is that it doesn't matter.
I think that an expert engineer could probably define the problem in such a way that the output of an LLM was the same every time. I don't think it's impossible to do that.
My understanding is that it is literally impossible to do that, to have identical output.
No way, man.
Like, it's solving the same problem, yes, but not identical code output.
No, I disagree with that. Just on surface level, that is just wrong. You could have it write a Python script which, I don't know, finds the first 10 characters of a string And you could run that a million times and you'd get the same output. There is like one correct way of doing that as far as the LLM is concerned. I think you would get the same output every time. It's all about how much freedom it has to make a decision. If the problem that you're solving is well-defined enough and small enough, I think you will get the same output every time.
I think the problem is, though, the fact that English is a terrible language to define things in any project, even if you are working in a project with other humans and you think that a project should work one way and they think they've explained it really well, but it hasn't. I just think the whole reason for computer language is a way to define to a computer how you want it to perform. And we've now suddenly decided that English is definitely the way to go.
I don't think the LLM really cares, though, does it?
I don't know. I have seen it not do what it's supposed to do. I've seen people batter away in a program for weeks and produce a functioning thing. It's not a good functioning thing. I don't know. It seems like this is a uneconomical way to spend people's time. Like, I don't want to talk to a computer in English. I think it's a shit way to interact with a PC. It's a shit way to define language. We use maths for a reason, and we've suddenly decided to use poetry. It just seems weird. But I am prepared to be wrong. The crash that's coming is going to take out so much. I don't know what we end up with left at the end of that, because we certainly won't have the money that is being pumped into the data centers to run this, because nobody's willing to pay for it. Like, even what we have right now, nobody's willing to pay for it, and we won't get AGI because you can't copy a copy and get a better version. That doesn't exist. So we don't have enough info to feed into it.
Yeah, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is not possible with the way this technology works. Like, that's just not possible. I said this probably, 4 or 5 years ago when we first started talking about this shit. The Victorians thought that you could get intelligence out of pistons and gears and shit because that's the technology they had. And that was obviously ridiculous. And this is similarly ridiculous.
I agree.
But who cares? Who cares about AGI?
Well, I think those guys do, because that's how they keep getting their funding every year, every round that they do. And if those companies had to be profitable, then yes, whatever, you've got a business plan now, proceed. But they don't. They've got loads of magic money that's going to disappear. They don't even make a tenth of the money that's put into them.
I totally agree with you with all of that.
But I don't know how, if we're hooked on this system, how the fuck do we survive out the far end when people won't have a data center full of graphics cards that they can't even buy for 2 years? Like, it just beggars belief. The scale of it, like.
I know this isn't the podcast for it, but, you know, even after the crash, there will be models that you could run on modest setups that will bring utility to what you do.
There may well be a place for a thing that can check how you're doing with your code, whatever. I don't think you're going to get the same level of expertise in very big inverted commas that you do from the likes of Claude, say.
No, of course not.
On a local model. It's going to be as a spell checker at best, I think.
Mm.
Well, I'm bored now, so that's the end of this conversation. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when who knows what it'll be. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelan.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.